I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
The coming weeks will show if the Democrats will keep supporting Biden or if the rift between the president and his constituency will deepen.
Now, still with me in studio to break this down is international affairs analyst Dan Perry and our very own correspondent Zach Enders. Now, Dan, I'm going to start with you. How concerned should Democrats be, both the party and the voters?
They should be very concerned that they're going to lose the election with almost absolute certainty unless they replace Biden. I think they are concerned. I think if you did a poll among Democrats today, if you did a new primary, you'd find Biden would have no chance of being elected whatsoever. The rebellion in the Democratic Party that you see among senators and congressmen and donors and celebrities like George Clooney is very muted because they don't want to look like they're forcing him out. That has its own political damage that attaches. But clearly they want him to step down. I predicted about a week ago in a column I wrote that he would because he's a decent person, and he must know. Right now, it's looking like I may have been foolish in that prediction, but I'm going to double down and stick with it. One way or another, Biden, I don't think, will be the candidate because what we have seen from Biden in recent weeks, that he's been forced to go public, essentially, really has all the hallmarks of diminishment of his mental capacities that basically wipes out his advantage vis-a-vis Trump. Biden's claim in 2020 was Trump is unacceptable. He's a pathological liar and a bit of a maniac, and that's not acceptable, whereas I may not be the world's most successful politician, but I might not be that great, but I'm acceptable. Right now, his mental state looks also unacceptable, and therefore you have Trump with all the, everything you can say about him versus Biden. Both are unacceptable. Therefore, his advantage has been wiped out.
Certainly a sense of panic for...
they don't know what to do to get him to step down.
They don't know what to do to get him to step down, but also it is unclear who would take his place. Who else can come and take his place?
Harris could. Any number of, well, I'm not so sure, but any number of other potential candidates.
Well, Zach, I want to ask you. We talked about this just the other day.
I've been saying very quietly for weeks that I'm not entirely sure this isn't a play either, that this isn't, let's keep the focus on Biden, but we know it's not going to be him in the end, and give the Trump team less time to know who their enemy is.
It's a very dangerous strategy.
It certainly is.
I don't know. I think at this point, how this is just coming from, I guess, a rationale that I don't know exists in Washington, D.C. at this point, but how can you look at an 82-year-old, 81-year-old?
81.
And
he'll be 82 upon inauguration.
At the end of a second term, you're staring at, what, 85, 86?
Well, especially when this is his state right now. And anyone who wonders whether indeed it's a diminishment need only to view Biden in a 2012 debate against Paul Ryan. He was sharp and he was impressive.
If this is expectation setting and you now have the public getting used to, wow, Biden looks diminished and terrible right now, then you trot out a Gavin Newsom or even Kamala Harris, they're going to look fantastic, and they're going to have
people are going to
rallies.
unite.
Yeah, so I feel like this potentially, I've felt like it's potentially a play. I stayed up until 3 a.m. last night to watch that press conference, and my jaw was on the floor because I had just watched the NATO flub where he had called Zelensky President Putin. That alone, I mean, is shocking to global relations and going to be on Russian state television for decades. Then to go an hour after that to the press conference, which was delayed, to have the very first question in his response call Vice President Kamala Harris Vice President Trump.
Yeah.
I don't know how you
every appearance has more gaffes, and it's not it's very clearly
he's always had a few of those, but this is
not
at
like
a different level.
It's clear what's happening, and I have to say the Democrats would be right to feel betrayed because Biden made rather clear in the 2020 election that he sees himself as a one-term transition president to a new generation. Yeah, and at this point he's fighting tooth and nail against the obvious truth, and I understand it's painful for him. I'm diminished compared to what I was when I was 25, and it's painful for me. But a mature person deals with that. He is right now guaranteeing that Trump will get reelected, will get elected, will return to the White House. That cannot possibly be what he wants, and At the end of the day, I think the Democrats will, if they have to force him out, I think they will. That may have to happen at the convention.
All right, well, we'll have to keep an eye on that. We'll, of course, we're going to continue covering the story. I want here just a last quick question. Zach, what are we going to see over the next week or the next 2 weeks? Are we going to see an upheaval in the Democratic Party? Is it going to, like, a public one?
Yeah,
Is it going to happen quietly?
We see it all throughout the states right now. I think this has been a swell that's been developing for quite a while. At any moment, I think we could get a push alert that says there's going to be an Oval Office address. And, you know, the real thing that comes after, I think, is if he says he's going to stop and not run again, then all of the voices, especially Democratic voices that have come out and said for him to come out of this race, the debate and the argument kind of turns to, does he deserve to still be president over the remainder of his term? Because he is not running for very specific health reasons. And should he still be president for...
They might invoke the 25th Amendment. That's conceivable. The Democrats...
He hasn't met with his cabinet, they say, in over 2 months.
Insane. The Democrats have to move fast because part of the narrative that is emerging here is that they covered this up for a long time. Exactly. At this point, they must project transparency, otherwise it'll hurt the party in a wider sense.
All right, this is the leader of the free world, right? That's what we call them.
Things are great.
Thank you both very much for your input and for being here with us tonight.